Hello everyone, and welcome to my review for Record of Ragnarok Season 2, Episode 2. Before we get into today's review, be sure to leave a like on the video, because statistically, you're more likely to do it when I say this. Anyway, today's episode of discussion covers Heracles' backstory. Something I forgot to bring up in the last episode review was them restructuring some things a bit for better flow. I'm pretty sure they did this in Season 1, I just can't remember because I could not be bothered to rewatch Season 1. But they moved Heracles' backstory, which, if I remember correctly, is chapters 22 and 23, to be about halfway through chapter 24. They skipped the backstory portions of chapter 22 and 23 and did the first half of chapter 24 all in the last episode. So then the first half of this episode is chapters 22 and 23, and then the remainder of 24 with the beginning pages of chapter 25. So about 2/3 of this episode is just Heracles' backstory, which means there wasn't really that much in the way of fights in it, so animation, not as much to go off of as in the previous episode. I suppose there's still about the same amount of CGI. I didn't think the CGI this episode was quite as good. There were two reasons for that. One, they did Jack's giant butterfly knife fan thing, and that didn't look very good, and I think the reason why is they didn't do something that Chainsaw Man did, which was for Denji's chainsaws, instead of actually animating them, they just put a filter over it that makes them look like they're moving. So they look like they're moving as fast as a chainsaw, but they're not actually moving at all. With the knife, they spun it, but they couldn't really spin it to be as fast as it's supposed to be going, so it looks like it's going too slow. What they should have done, I think, instead, is just had like a disc model and put that kind of movement filter over it, so, you know, it looks like a spinning blade in an animation, and just, you know, have that instead, and I think it would have looked better. The other reason was they did some cuts between the CG models and the 2D models when Herc is getting bolted with the rain of knives. He's getting hit by the knives like half the time in CG and half the time in 2D, and they just kind of switch between it directly between shots. There's no transition shot in between. You don't shoot to the audience reaction and then to him being a different model, which means you have one shot where he's in CG, and then the shot right after he's in 2D, and you can see that it's different, and it's kind of jarring. Doesn't look very good. The actual movement, for the most part, was still fine, but I didn't think the CGI was quite as well implemented in this episode. However, the Stymphalian birds still look pretty good. They've done a pretty good job with the labors thus far. The Stymphalian bird doesn't really have like a big crazy attack visual, it's just a giant gust of wind. But I suppose they animated that quite well. I thought the directing was a bit better in this episode. They did a good job with Heracles' backstory. I noticed that they changed the aspect ratio, so it kind of has the black bars at the top and bottom. I guess that gives it a little bit more of like, I don't know, like an old movie look or something, I suppose. I just thought it was kind of a neat detail. I think that choice is pretty obviously intentional. They've done some stylistic choices for the backstories. The most notable one was with Thor's, when they gave it the, I forget exactly what it is, like the after image storybook visual. But the issue was that they paced that so slowly, it was just dreadful. This had good pacing. They didn't mess with the pacing at all. It flowed perfectly fine. So there were no problems with that. I think it's safe to say the backstory portion was like the best part of the episode. Even it had some pretty good animation. I don't think they really used still frames that much in it. They have way better lighting here. I don't know. I think they made a serious mistake with the first season. I think I've nailed what it is now. They made it look like almost everyone is constantly in a giant spotlight, and it makes them look like shit. It makes them look way too bright. Here, in this backstory, where it's just natural lighting, not even as dark as the fight is in the present, it looks so much better than almost any other scene in Season 1. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. I need to think back on how they did the lighting for some of the other stuff in Season 1, because, like, man, what a significant improvement, just kind of overall. I really hope they changed the lighting a bit for Shiva versus Raiden, because, you know, it's not a deal breaker for me, but I really think the way that they did it in Season 1 was a real detriment to the look of the anime. Music, still good. Someone pointed out to me, Ace pointed out to me the other day that apparently Heracles' theme seems to have the exact same rhythm as Back in Black by AC/DC. I listened to it and I'm like, kind of? I guess? It sorta does? Alright, I guess. Sure, why not? So, yeah, that's a thing, I suppose. Scene with Ares and his army coming down to Thebes looked good. I think we got a little bit of Jack's theme. When he was, like, falling back down to the ground after he got all the knives thrown back at him, it was sort of like another... I think it was a little bit more of, like, an orchestral theme, a little bit. We'll have to get some more of it. I'll have to listen to it some more before I can really figure out if that's Jack's theme or not. I'm pretty sure it is, though. Sounds good. We'll see if I get even more impressed by it when we hear more of it. Lastly, voice acting. I thought everyone did a good job. Pretty much same as the previous episode. Jack's VA, still doing a good job, but... okay, so I'm only listening to this with sub. Like, I'm not watching the English dub, I'm watching subs. So, we have Japanese voice actors. I knew when we were getting to it, that it's like, oh, he's gonna sing London Bridge is Broken Down. He's gonna sing the whole thing. But he speaks Japanese, so he's gonna be a Japanese-speaking person reading out English lines. Oh my god, we're gonna get English London Bridge is Broken Down, and we did. And the voice actor, I think, in terms of tone, was doing a good job, but in terms of listening to the actual lines he was saying, I couldn't help but find it kind of funny. Like, it just sounds funny, it sounds kind of off, it just can't be helped. Last thing, they had London Bridge is Falling Down, or London Bridge is Breaking Down, whichever, playing over the credits. They did something different for the credits for this episode, or they had some credits playing before the ED. I didn't watch all the way to the end, but like I got to the credits and I was like, oh, that's neat. Where they were having kids, and I think also adults singing London Bridge is Broken Down. For those of you who are confused as to why they changed it, London Bridge is Broken Down was the version from back in the 19th century, so that would be the version that Jack knows. That's why it's not London Bridge is Falling Down. I remember when we discussed that way back when, like 3 years ago. Good times, good times. Anyway, yeah. So, I thought that was neat. Having it be sort of like a children's rendition of it is interesting. I saw some people wishing they had done the, the Disturbed version of it? The one that got popular because of MySD. Shout out to him. I think he put his MMVs back up on YouTube publicly now, so you guys can watch those again. They're still better than the anime. But I digress. Because that was like kind of a cool, sinister rendition of it. Whereas in this case, it's more of like a creepy, childlike rendition of it. It's definitely still kind of unhinged, given the context, and I think that's kind of the idea, is that Jack, deep down, is an unloved, traumatized child, and that is the root of his character. That's where all of this messed up stuff stems from. I'm very curious to see how that's going to be done in the next episode, because obviously the next episode is presumably going to be the one where we see Jack's backstory. I'm trying to figure out if I think this fight will go on through episode 5. I'm pretty sure it will. Because I've heard that they've moved around some other stuff, so I'm thinking this fight will probably end like halfway through episode 5, if not maybe a little bit more, and like 2/3 of the way through. And then Shiva versus Raiden will start on episode 7, so then that fight will get 4 episodes. Which sounds about right, because the fights, chapter-wise, it was about as long as Heracles versus Jack, but I'd say in terms of like what actually happens in it and the pacing, it's not as long, especially because they're moving around that one thing. So yeah, good episode. I'll give it a 7.5. Pretty solid. So yeah, that's all for this review. You guys know the drill already. Not very many of you watch these anyway, but you know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. I think what I'll do for the next few episode reviews, because I have a lot of free time coming up, so I'm going to watch these episodes, I'm going to record a lot of reviews, is I'm going to put them up for early access here on the channel for members, and I'm also going to put it up for early access on the Patreon, so those of you who are interested or who are part of either of those can watch them on either of those two until we get the usual public release. These will be coming out, I think this one will be coming out Tuesday. You're presumably watching this Tuesday or later. And then the episode 3 one I will release on Thursday, because I don't usually have anything I release on Thursdays. And then we'll do Saturday, Sunday. And then, these will be the days that we release these. Actually, wait, no. You're watching this on Monday. I'm an idiot. I forgot about changing that. So Mondays, Thursdays, Saturdays, Sundays. That'll be the usual for the full public release. So yeah, that's all, folks. Till next time, see you around. Take care.